Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I'm going to have a look today at one of the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya that has a number of points of interest. This is the sutta where the Buddha goes up to the realm of Baka, the Brahma, and has discourse with him. This sutta is interesting in a number of ways. To begin with, in the Pali Canon, it's maybe the most comprehensive glimpse we have of existence in the Brahma world. The Brahmas are a class of being that are beyond the Devas. They're on a different plane of existence. When thinking about the Brahmas, it's first of all important to understand that the Devas have more in common with us than they do with the Brahmas. We're part of the same level of consciousness as the Devas, but the Brahmas are considered to be on a higher plane. The Devas are part of the sense desire plane, and the Brahmas are the plane of form. They live an immensely long time. The higher Brahmas can live for hundreds of kalpas, and there are many different grades of Brahma. The sutta we're dealing with here concerns Brahmas of the first level. Baka is what would be called a Maha-Brahma, a great Brahma, and he has a retinue of two lower grades of Brahmas in his realm. They are the Purohitas, Brahma Purohitas, and the Brahma Kayakas. Brahma Purohitas are the ministers. This would be a literal translation, like his assistants or ministers. There's a limited number of those, and the Kayakas are the commonality of the Brahma world. In the commentary to another sutta that concerns Brahmas in the Digha Nikaya, there is a description of how the lesser Brahmas worship the higher Brahma. And the commentary is, in some sense, being dismissive of the Brahmas as being deluded, and says they bend over like fishhooks in the presence of the great Brahma. Before the Buddha, in the late Vedic religion, the Brahmanical religion, after the Upanishads, Brahma was considered to be a solitary deity and the creator, the highest deity in their religion. And they also made a distinction between Brahma as a person, which was a masculine noun, and Brahman as a force or a principle in the universe, which is a neuter noun. And it's perhaps some trace of that is present in the Pali, because the word for Brahma is classed as a masculine noun, but some of its declensions take the neuter form. So it's kind of a mixed form. The Brahmas don't have gender. They're not male or female, because they have transcended sensuality. They don't have sex, and they don't eat in the ordinary way. They only possessed of two senses of sight and hearing. So they're an entirely different form of being. They're beyond sensuality. And their consciousness or level of being is considered the equivalent of first jhana for the Brahmas of this level. So that means they're beyond the 5 hindrances. Although they are subject to defilements of false views and pride and desire for being. So they're not perfected beings by any stretch. Now this particular Brahma Baka, he had an ancient connection with the Buddha. And the commentary goes into the past lives of Baka. And he spent many lifetimes as a human, as a hermit or an ascetic, developing his meditation. And he developed psychic powers, and he used them for good, for helping beings. And they recount 2 stories that happened in different lifetimes. One was when Baka was a hermit beside the banks of the Ganges River, and a boat full of people came down the river partying, like a party boat going down the Ganges, and people were laughing and playing, and they were throwing their rubbish overboard into the river. And this angered the Naga, the chief Naga of the Ganges. How do these people dare to foul my river with their rubbish? And he reared up with his serpent form and a giant hood, and he was about to crush the boat. And this hermit saw what was happening. He said, "These people must not perish." And he turned into the form of a giant supana, these gigantic birds, also called Garudas, that are the enemies of the Nagas. The Naga became fearful and swam away. And the Bodhisattva in that life was one of the people on the boat. In another life, some bandits had seized some villagers. They took over a village and they looted it, and they were carrying a lot of the people away as slaves. And again, this hermit intervened, and he conjured up the image of a big army, big royal army coming up the hill to catch the bandits, and the bandits just ran away and the people were freed. And again, the Buddha was one of the villagers. And in his last human life, the Buddha was also an ascetic and was his student. So he had this deep connection with Baka. Then when Baka died from that life, he was reborn into the 4th jhana level, the Vehapala Brahmas. And while he was in that form of existence, he grew desirous of experiencing bliss, which is a factor of the 3rd level. And so he practiced 3rd jhana, and he fell down in his next birth to the 3rd level, and then the same thing happened. He was desirous of rapture, so he practiced 2nd jhana and fell to the 2nd jhana level, and then finally he fell to the 1st Brahma level. Now some people, hearing that, how he's at the higher level, a very sublime existence, and he's desirous of coarser states, they may find that hard to understand, but just think for yourself how many times you're deep in meditation and your mind then drifts off to some coarser form of imagining or complaining, or there's a tendency in the mind that sometimes is negative and pulls one down from the higher sublime levels to the lower. And this is what happened to Baka. So that's sufficient background. The sutta is not very long, so I'll go through it and I'll stop here and there to comment on it. It's called the Brahmana Nimantanika Sutta, Invitation of a Brahma. It's number 49 in the Majjhima. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove and at the Pindika's Park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. "Bhikkhus, venerable sirs," they replied, the Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, on one occasion I was living at Ukata in the Subhaga Grove at the root of a royal sala tree. Now on that occasion a pernicious view had arisen in Baka the Brahma thus: this is permanent, this is everlasting, this is eternal, this is total, this is not subject to pass away. For this neither is born, nor ages, nor dies, nor pass away, nor reappears. And beyond this there is no escape. So Baka had fallen into the view of eternalism, which is something we read elsewhere in the suttas that Brahmas are subject to. Because of their very long lifespan, they believe they are immortal. I knew with my mind the thought in the mind of Baka the Brahma, and just as quickly as a strong man might extend his flexed arm or flex his extended arm, I vanished from the root of the royal sala tree in the Subhaga Grove at Ukata and appeared in the Brahma world. Baka the Brahma saw me coming in the distance and said, "Come, good sir, welcome, good sir. It is long, good sir, since you found an opportunity to come here. Now, good sir, this is permanent, this is everlasting, this is eternal, this is total, this is not subject to pass away, for this neither is born, nor ages, nor dies, nor passes away, nor reappears, and beyond this there is no escape." Baka greeted him with the phrase, "It is long since you have come here," and it's noted in the commentary that this doesn't mean the Buddha had ever been there before. It's a common polite form of greeting, and it occurs elsewhere in the canon as well. It doesn't imply that the Buddha was ever there before. When this was said, I told Baka the Brahma, "The worthy Baka has lapsed into ignorance. He has lapsed into ignorance, in that he says of the impermanent that it is permanent, of the transient that it is everlasting, of the non-eternal that it is eternal, of the incomplete that it is total, of what is subject to pass away that it is not subject to pass away, of what is born, ages, dies, and passes away, and reappears, that it neither is born, nor ages, nor dies, nor passes away, or reappears. And when there is an escape beyond this, he says there is no escape beyond this." So the Buddha refutes his view of eternalism. And then as an interesting detail occurs, Mara, the evil one, took possession of a member of Brahma's assembly, one of the Brahmakayakas. And he told me, "Bhikkhu, Bhikkhu, do not disbelieve him, do not disbelieve him, for this Brahma is the great Brahma, the Mahabrahma, the overlord, the untranscended, of infallible vision, wielder of mastery, Lord, maker and creator, most high providence, master and father of those that are ever can be." So a couple of things to note here. One is that Mara, who is a deity of the Dewa realm, of the highest Dewa realm, was able to occupy the mind of one of the Brahmakayakas. And this seems a contradiction because the Brahmas are beyond the realm of sensuality. And the commentary does go into this and states that Mara's range extends this far to the lowest of the Brahma world. Only the very bottom of the Brahma world can he occupy their mind. And he does so by entering delusion into their mind. He can't tempt them with sensuality because they're beyond that. It's just not in their makeup. But they have the fault of tendency to wrong view. The other thing to note here is this list of epithets of the Brahma, and a very similar list occurs in the Brahmajala Sutta. The list of these titles has a very kind of Old Testament feel to it, like the Father, the Creator, the Providence. And it kind of strikes me that the whole picture of this Brahma world has a lot of features very much like Christian heaven. It resembles that more really than it does the Vedic conception of heaven. It's kind of an interesting connection there. The Brahmas are beings of light. One of their features is luminosity. So you've got Brahma surrounded by all these other Brahmas that worship him, like archangels and angels. And they're all continuously praising him and worshiping him. So then he gets into further speech by this lesser Brahma that's occupied by Mara, and he gets into his position, or his argument. Before your time, Bhikkhu, there were recluses and Brahmins in the world who condemned earth through disgust with earth, who condemned water through disgust with water, who condemned fire through disgust with fire, who condemned air through disgust with air, who condemned beings through disgust with beings, who condemned gods through disgust with gods, who condemned Pajapati through disgust with Pajapati, who condemned Brahma through disgust with Brahma, and on the dissolution of the body, when their life was cut off, they became established in an inferior body. So he's saying that one who develops a rejection of the elements of being, beginning with earth, air, fire, water, and going through the gods, and Pajapati is a high god in the Vedic pantheon. In some versions he's a creator. And Brahma, if they reject these aspects of being, they take a lower rebirth. So this is Mara speaking through the Brahma, urging the Buddha to embrace samsara. And he goes on to the contrary position. Before your time, Bhikkhu, there were also recluses and Brahmas in the world who lauded earth through delight in earth. And he goes through the same list again, through delight in Pajapati and delight in Brahma. And on the dissolution of the body, when their life was cut off, they become established in a superior body. So he's saying you should embrace samsara. So Bhikkhu, I tell you this, be sure, good sir, to do only as Brahma says. Never overstep the word of Brahma. If you overstep the word of the Brahma, Bhikkhu, then like a man trying to deflect an approaching beam of light with a stick, or like a man losing his hold on the earth with his hands and feet as he slips into a deep chasm, so it will befall you too, Bhikkhu. Be sure, good sir, to do only as the Brahma says. Never overstep the word of the Brahma. Do you not see the Brahma's assembly seated here, Bhikkhu? And Mara, the evil one, thus called to witness the Brahma's assembly. So Mara's appealing to the consensus of all these lesser Brahmas. They're all worshipping the great Brahma. Why don't you go along with it? Submit to peer pressure. When this was said, I told the evil one. Remember, this is the Buddha speaking first person. I told the evil one, I know you, evil one. Do not think he does not know me. You are Mara, evil one. And the Brahma and Brahma's assembly and the members of Brahma's assembly have all fallen into your hands. They have fallen into your power. You, evil one, think. This one too has fallen into my hands. He too has fallen into my power. But I have not fallen into your hands, evil one. I have not fallen into your power. When this was said, Baka the Brahma told me, good sir, I say of the permanent that it is permanent. And again he goes his rant about everything being, or his existence. He's actually referring to his own existence, his eternal, his existence in his realm. And he says, before your time, Bhikkhu, there were recluses and Brahmins whose asceticism lasted as long as your whole life. They knew when there is an escape beyond, that there is an escape beyond. And when there is no escape beyond, there is no escape beyond. So, Bhikkhu, I tell you this, you will find no escape beyond. So he thought his existence was the ultimate. And eventually you will reap only weariness and disappointment. If you hold on to earth, you will be close to me, within my domain, for me to work my will upon and punish. that always strikes me as a very odd phrase. Like, this is an inducement to be his follower. Do as I say and hold tight to the elements of existence, and then you will be mine to work my will upon and punish. I take it to be like a threat. Yeah? And the commentary actually says the punishment would be rebirth into a dwarfish and deformed body. And then the Buddha replies, I know this too, Brahma. If I hold to earth, I shall be close to you and within your domain for you to work your will upon and punish. If I hold to water, to fire, to air, to beings, to gods, to Pajapati, to Brahma, I shall be close to you and within your domain for you to work my will upon and punish. Furthermore, I understand your reach and sway to extend thus. Baka the Brahma has this much power, this much might, this much influence. Now, good sir, says Baka, how far do you understand my reach and sway to extend? And then the Buddha replies in verse. As far as moon and sun revolve, shining and lighting up the quarters, over 1,000-fold such worlds does your sovereignty extend. And there you know the high and low, and those with lust and free from lust, the state that is thus and otherwise, the coming and going of beings. Brahma, I understand your reach and your sway to extend thus. Baka the Brahma has this much power, this much might, this much influence. So he's first stating how much the sovereignty or power and knowledge of Brahma extends. There's over 1,000 world systems. The world system being the Chakavala, Mount Meru, the 4 islands, and the sun and the moon. And 1,000 such of these is within the sphere of the Brahma. So that's a pretty powerful and vast expanse. And this is a point I like to recall when talking about jhana, because remember that this consciousness of these Brahmas is the equivalent of jhana in a human being. So often people make the mistake of thinking with the meditation that they're trying to narrow their mind to a point, and that's completely wrong. The mind with samadhi is vast and expansive, just as a Brahma can contemplate 1,000 world systems. But the Buddha goes on, after defining the limits of Baka's knowledge, which is some considerable space, he then goes on, but Brahma, there are 3 other bodies, which you neither know nor see, which I know and see. There is the body called the gods of streaming radiance, from which you passed away and reappeared here. That's the Abhasara Brahmas of 2nd jhana level. Because you have dwelt there long, your memory of that has lapsed, and hence you do not know or see it, but I know and see it. Thus, Brahma, in regard to direct knowledge, I do not stand merely at the same level as you. How then could I know less? Because I know more than you. There is the body called the gods of refulgent glory. That's the Subhakina Brahmas of the 3rd level, equivalent to 3rd jhana. There's the body called the gods of great fruit, Vehapala, that's the 4th jhana level. You do not know or see, but I know and see. Thus, Brahma, in regard to direct knowledge, I do not stand merely at the same level as you. How could I know less? Rather, I know more than you. So Baka has no inkling that these realms even exist. Brahma, having directly known earth as earth, and having directly known that which is not commensurate with the earthness of earth, I do not claim to be earth, I do not claim to be in earth, I do not claim to be apart from earth, I do not claim earth to be mine, I did not affirm earth. Thus, Brahma, in regard to direct knowledge, I do not stand merely at the same level as you. How then could I know less? Rather, I know more than you. So now the Buddha is getting directly into his own understanding, and in the very first line of this, he says, having directly known that which is not commensurate with earthiness of earth. And that the verb or commensurate with, or verbal phrase, commensurate with, is a difficult translation, and there's some discussion in the footnotes here about the use of that word. And what the Buddha is actually referring to, that which is not commensurate with earth, is nibbana. The Buddha is saying, because I know the unconditioned, that which is not partaking of the element of earth, then I know more than you. You do not even conceive of that. And he goes through that saying, I do not see myself as earth, or of the earth, or apart from the earth, or with the earth. So nibbana is completely outside of all of these conceptions. And he goes through and repeats the same thing with this whole long list, the 4 elements, and then through the various gods, and he extends it through to the gods of the higher realms as well, the gods of the Abhisara, Subhakina, Vehafala. And further, he says that he doesn't identify with the overlord, as the all in all. Having directly known that which is not commensurate with the allness of all, I do not claim to be all. I do not claim to be in all. I do not claim to be apart from all. I did not claim all to be mine. I did not affirm it. Thus, Brahma, in regard to direct knowledge, I do not merely stand at the same level as you. I know more. This whole passage is very similar to a passage in the Mullapariyaya Sutta, which is the first sutta of this collection, the Majjhima, where the Buddha goes through almost identical list, beginning with the 4 elements and then through various things, various levels of gods, then up to the allness of all, and analyzes them in terms of how they are perceived or held in the mind by beings with different levels of understanding. In this sutta, he compares the approach of the Patujjana, the Seka, and the Aseka. The Patujjana literally means the common folk. This is the people who have not attained to any state of awakening. The Seka means a learner or a student, and it's someone who has at least stream entry, but not yet arahantship. And the Aseka is the arahant, the non-learner. He doesn't have anything more to learn. He's done. It's like the grad student or graduate. So Patujjana, Seka, and Aseka. And the Patujjana identifies with all these various elements, and he perceives them. He uses the verb sanjanati, perceives. He perceives earth, and what he perceives, he conceives, manyati. So then he spins ideas in his mind based on his perception. But then the Seka, he directly knows. The verb is abhijanati, earth, water, fire, air. And he should make an effort not to conceive manyati. He's still subject to possibility of conceiving, spinning of the mind. And the commentary goes on to specify what's meant by abhijanati in this case. Direct knowing of earth or water or whatever means that he sees the 3 characteristics in them. But he's still subject to mental conception and running off the rails. But the arahant, he directly knows, but he does not conceive. He does not manyati. So this is a very similar passage. It's a little bit different language. In this passage, in the Invitation to Brahma Sutta, the Buddha is more comparing his own sublime understanding and his experience of the unconditioned relative to all these things up to the highest, the all in all, which I see in that a reference to the Upanishadic view of the one mind. The Buddha says he sees through all these things as conditioned. Good sir, if you claim to directly know that which is not commensurate with the allness of all, this is Baka speaking again. Good sir, if you claim to directly know that which is not commensurate with the allness of all, may your claim not turn out to be empty and vain. And then the Buddha replies in verse. And this is a very important verse. It occurs twice in the canon, a slightly different version in the Digha, which I'll also reference here. Now, this is Nyanamoli's translation, or this was translated by Nyanamoli and then revised or edited by Bhikkhu Bodhi. The consciousness that makes no showing, nor has to do with finiteness, not claiming being with respect to all. Now, before I get into it, this is Maurice Walsh's translation. There's two verses here. This is from the Kavada Sutta, which, very briefly, I'll state the story of the Kavada Sutta, is that a bhikkhu wants to find the answer to the question, where do earth, air, fire, and water cease without remainder? And he's wondering in his mind where this might be. And so he says, well, I don't know, maybe I should ask the gods. And he uses his psychic power to go up from level to level through the various hierarchy of the heavens. And like he goes to Tawatingsa, and then the Tawatingsa gods say to him, we don't know, but maybe the Yama gods know. And so he goes upstairs, and he keeps going up until he reaches the level of Baka, or not Baka, it's a different Brahma, but he reaches the Brahma world. And the Brahma gives him the same routine as in this sutta. He goes, I am the great Brahma, I am the mighty, the all-powerful, and this bhikkhu says, yes, that may be very well and good, but you didn't answer my question. Where do earth, air, fire, and water cease without remainder? And finally, the Brahma, this is kind of a humorous touch. The Brahma takes the bhikkhu aside and says, look, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of my assembly. I have no idea where they cease without remainder. Why don't you go, you've got the Buddha in your realm, why don't you go down and ask him? So he goes back to earth, and he asks the Buddha, and the Buddha's reply is, to start with, is you're asking the wrong question. You should ask, where do earth, water, and fire no footing find? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form wholly destroyed? And then the answer is, and the second stanza is the same as in this sutta, but the translation is different. Where consciousness is signless, boundless, all luminous, that's where earth, water, fire, and air find no footing. There both long, short, small and great, fair and foul, their name and form are wholly destroyed. There the cessation of consciousness is destroyed. So, consciousness is signless, anidasana, boundless, ananta, all luminous, sabato, pabang. And those three terms are translated here as makes no showing, signless, makes no showing. Boundless is not having to do with finiteness, which is kind of an unnecessarily wordy way for it. The Pali is ananta, just like one word. It's boundless, without limit, literally limitless. So the enlightened mind is, first of all, it's signless, anidasana. It has no indication. It has no, you can't name it or find a sign or a reference to it. It's boundless. And the last phrase is the one that's difficult of translation. And there have been several, beginning with the commentaries, provides like 3 different possible translations. But I think Maurice Walsh's is the most direct from the Pali. The Pali is sabato pabang. And pabang means, amongst other things, it means luminous. Having light. And sabato is all, everything complete. So all luminous, I think, is probably the original intention. So the enlightened mind or the awakened mind has these three characteristics. It's signless, boundless, and all luminous. Then after the Buddha declares this verse, then he goes on, that, meaning this liberated mind, the mind that knows the unconditioned, that is not commensurate with the earthness of earth, is not commensurate with waterness of water, is not commensurate with the allness of all. Then the Brahma says, Baka, good sir, I shall vanish from you. This episode is a little brief in the Sutta. The commentary goes on to say that, or explains it as a lalitika, a game or a contest that Baka was proposing. We'll see who really is the mightier being here. I'll give you, we'll give a contest. And I'll vanish from you, and you won't be able to see me. And then you won't be able to vanish from me because I can see all. So the Buddha, of course, he takes the challenge. Vanish from me if you can, Brahma. Then Baka the Brahma is saying, I shall vanish from the recluse Gautama. I shall vanish from the recluse Gautama. Was unable to vanish. Thereupon I said, Brahma, I shall vanish from you. And again, the commentary fleshes this out. It says that Baka tried to vanish 3 times. The first time, he made the resolution to revert to his natural state, with the implication that he was in a coarser state to relate to the Buddha, and his natural state would be invisible to lower beings. But that seems a bit contradictory to me, because elsewhere it's clear that the Buddha, with the Buddha Chaku, the divine eye of the Buddha, he can see into all realms. But in any case, in the commentary it says he tried to change to his natural state, and the Buddha used his psychic power to prevent that. Then he created a great darkness, and the Buddha penetrated the darkness with his light. He emanated light and dispelled the darkness. And then the commentary takes it to a point of comedy, a low comedy. It says that Baka, running out of further measures, fled from his palace and tried to hide behind a tree. And this led to merriment of his followers, who started mocking him and saying, is this the great Brahma crouching behind the tree? So the commentaries are not entirely without a sense of humor. So getting back to the sutta, and again, this is the Buddha speaking in first person. Then I performed such a feat of supernormal power that the Brahma and Brahma's assembly and the members of Brahma's assembly could hear my voice but not see me. After I had vanished, I uttered this stanza. Having seen fear in every mode of being, and in being seeking for non-being, and in being seeking for non-being, I do not affirm any mode of being, nor do I cling to any delight in being. So the Buddha is declaring that he's beyond bhava tanha and vibhava tanha, the desire for being and the desire for not being, because he sees every form of being is marked with the 3 characteristics, and seeking for non-being is also another way of engaging in the samsaric game. At that time, Brahma and Brahma's assembly and the members of Brahma's assembly were struck with wonder and amazement. It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous, that great power and great might of the recluse Gautama. We have never before seen or heard of any recluse or Brahman who had such great power and great might as this recluse Gautama, who went forth from the Sakyan clan. Sirs, though living in a generation that delights in being, and takes delight in being, that rejoices in being, he has extirpated being together with its root. So they are amazed that anyone could not delight in being, because this is a characteristic of Brahmas, that they're very they're full of being. They're mighty beings, and that they don't have sensual desire. They have this desire for existence and power, and they can't imagine anyone's gone beyond that. Then Mara, the evil one, again took possession of a member of the assembly, and he said to me, "Good sir, if that is what you know, if that is what you have discovered, do not guide your lay disciples, or those gone forth. Do not teach the Dhamma to your lay disciples, or to those gone forth. Create no yearning in your lay disciples, or in those gone forth. Before your time, Bhikkhu, there were recluses and Brahmins in the world, claiming to be accomplished and fully enlightened, and they guided their lay disciples and those gone forth. They taught the Dhamma to their lay disciples and those gone forth. They created yearning in lay disciples and those gone forth. And when their life was cut off, they became established in an inferior body." So Mara is saying, okay, you know this stuff, but don't spread it around, teach it. You'll just make more trouble, because you just get people's hopes up, and then they'll develop a different kind of craving, and when they die, they'll take a lower birth. So better just not teach. Before your time, Bhikkhu, there were also recluses and Brahmins in the world, claiming to be accomplished and fully enlightened, and they did not guide their lay disciples. And they created no yearning in their lay disciples and those gone forth. And on the dissolution of their body, they became established in a superior body. Be sure, good sir, to abide inactive, devoted to a pleasant abiding here and now. This is better left undeclared. And so, good sir, inform no one else. Mara uses this line on the Buddha elsewhere too. He says, okay, I know you're fully enlightened and you know the way to full enlightenment, but at least don't teach it to anybody else. When this was said, I told Mara, the evil one, "I know you, evil one." That's always what the Buddha says when he's confronted by Mara. "I know you, Mara. Do not think he does not know me. You are Mara, the evil one. It is not out of compassion for their welfare that you speak thus. It is without compassion for their welfare that you speak thus. You think thus, evil one, those to whom the recluse Gautama teaches the Dhamma will escape from my sphere. These recluses and Brahmins of yours, evil one, who claim to be accomplished and fully enlightened, were not accomplished and fully enlightened. But I, who claim to be accomplished and fully enlightened, am accomplished and fully enlightened. If the Tathagata teaches the Dhamma to disciples such as he is such, evil one. And if the Tathagata does not teach the Dhamma to disciples, he is such. Meaning that the Buddha is Tathagata, he's fully enlightened whether he teaches or not. It's not going to change his state of being. Why is that? Because the Tathagata has abandoned the taints that defile, that bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future rebirth, aging, and death. He has cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them so they are no longer subject to future arising. Just as a palm tree is cut off, is incapable of further growth, so too the Tathagata has abandoned the taints that defile, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Thus, because Mara was unable to reply, and because it began with the Brahma's invitation, this discourse is entitled On the Invitation of a Brahma. I was trying to remember who said this. It may have been Bhikkhu Bodhi in one of his notes. Said that in this sutta the Buddha meets God and the devil and defeats them both. So as you can see, this is a very interesting sutta with some profound Dhamma in it, and when the Buddha is speaking to very elevated beings, so to Brahmas, so his teaching has got to be at a very high level. And we have this really wonderful description of the awakened mind in 3 clauses. 4 if you add the one from the other sutta, no footing found. So, no footing found, signless, boundless, and luminous. So that's the discourse of Invitation to a Brahma.